Hello, everyone. We are live for the first live stream of July, the day after the 4th of July. We have a special treat for this week. We have two guests. Both of them have been on this stream before, Rex Eloquens and Joe Camel. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, see, it's going great. Hello, everyone.
Excellent.
Hello,
Joe, it's been a while.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, and you said you're walking your dog?
Yeah, I
Is
have
that what you said? Okay.
a dog that I walk 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I had to take him for a walk. Yesterday, of course, is the worst day for American dogs because it's the 4th of July.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. We just had a neighbor move in across the street, and apparently they like fireworks. And because they just moved in, I didn't want to be rude or anything, but they were blasting fireworks till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
that's a bit of a bother.
Yeah.
I'd be a little upset.
I mean, it didn't bother me because I'm deaf.
Well,
But my poor dog was he was hiding in my closet until about 2:30.
It's
Oh, wow.
bothering your family, you know?
Yeah.
that does seem like an appropriate response would be a 5 a.m. leaf blower.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just saying.
Ooh.
Motorized.
I have a cordless leaf blower, so I'm not sure if that's going to do anything, but
Yeah,
I
it's
get
not
what
as
you
good.
mean.
Yeah. You need one of those motorized variety.
Yeah. So besides Rex and Joe, we also have Dammit John and Blarg.
Howdy.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
And Blarg was just complaining on how cold it is over where he is, so it was very hard to sympathize.
Really sucks, bro. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, no, today is great, but the last 4 days have been down into the low single digits for us. So that's cold where I live. Low single digits in Celsius, not in your
Yeah, Fahrenheit.
weird unit. His world units, the stuff that makes sense.
Yeah.
The non-freedom units.
Yeah.
Basically the non-freedom unit, yeah.
Yeah. And Rex has been affected by the floods. He's in Texas. And you're saying that you actually saw, or maybe you didn't see, but apparently caskets are coming out because of the flood?
Yeah, it's apparently gone so bad where some of the graveyards, uh, a lot of the dirt has been moved because of the torrential rain, and some of the caskets are just washing up. And I've also seen that some cars have been taken away too by the waters, and in a way it is morbid, but it is also fascinating because like I've lived here like for most of my whole life, and we've had floods, but we haven't had floods. This is something I'm not used to at all.
Well, at some point, the dead are going to come out and be walking the streets, right? I think that's what happens.
Well, that's exactly right. It's we're just waiting on seeing piles of clothing left behind while people got whooped up into the whatever place that they're saying it's coming from. So yeah, you've got the dead rising from the grave. Well, we got that already. So they aren't walking away from those graves, but.
And we have Steve-O joining us a little bit late, but hey,
Yeah.
Steve-O, how's it going?
Hey, Steve-O.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Computer was giving me hell tonight, so
No worries. So, Rex, I think when you last came on, did we talk about religion at all, or what your religious stance is? I don't remember.
I believe we did about my stance, and we also talked about a little bit about Kant and Kant's religious stance. But I labeled myself, I believe, something akin to an open skeptic. So I understand I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong inductively. Just using logic, I understand I could be totally wrong, but I have my doubts. That's what I'll say. And I would not consider myself a religious man, even if I
Mm-hmm.
do agree that some of the virtues and morals I have do come from religion.
Okay. Well, we won't get into that. I just couldn't remember. I remember the cons, but not the God discussion. Interesting enough. So, but that's fine for this topic. Actually, before we get into the main topic, I did want to discuss a little bit about who is this Blargoman? Wait, Blarg, you have like another account? La
Oh, that's the wrong.
Skepticula?
That's
Really?
not
That's new.
what I meant to. That's my extra special uh, account for when everything else stops working.
Ah.
But
I
I just
see.
linked the wrong one. So hang on.
All right, no worries. Before we get to the main discussion, which I think is going to be maybe a little bit esoteric, it'll be on metaphilosophy. But before we get to that, I did want to talk a little bit about the current events, which is uh, I guess it's called, what is the full name? One Big Beautiful Bill. That's right. So this idea or this bill that really seemed to take a lot of effort to pass because it has a lot of things that are not popular and are affecting a lot of people, but somehow it got passed. But I did want to talk a little bit about how with the current politics, they're able to push a bill that affects a lot of people and affects the poor especially, in terms of taking away some of their benefits, at in order to be able to give tax cuts to the rich, to the multi-billionaires. And I want to kind of talk about, try to understand, or at least get everyone's kind of feedback on how it is that in our politics it's possible to get a bill like that pushed through. Despite most of the constituents of the people who voted for it, being negatively affected. What are your thoughts? And I guess I completely admit I poisoned the well by that, the way I presented it. So if you disagree, that I would definitely love to hear it.
It's nice and easy. It just tells you who the party is beholden to. You go, do they care what their constituents want? No.
That's a no.
That's a hard no.
A hard no. Yeah.
So yeah.
The most
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the most charitable and yet still cynical analysis that I can sort of drum up on this is that there is enough of the hard MAGA devotees, acolytes, that if a representative doesn't back the bill, then Trump can stir up enough support to primary somebody to make it that much more difficult to stay in power. So there is this perception that Trump has this loyal army that will follow him through hell, even when the policies in place can be shown to work against their best interests. But because the cult leader said so, then it must be true, regardless of the actual facts on the ground. If the question is, how could this possibly get passed if nobody likes it? It's not that nobody likes it. It's that enough of a minority can be in lockstep with the cult leader to make it difficult for the party in power. And that's the most charitable and yet still cynical analysis that I can provide.
Well, I think for the regular panels, I have a good sense of where you guys stand.
Yeah.
Let me, Rex, Joe, do you guys have a different viewpoint on this?
Not necessarily, but it can. I think maybe to expand on it, I'd say, well, you have to look at the bill, and you have to say, all right, who does this affect? Who is it for, really? Like I know in the bill outlines many details, but I know there are a few billion going to just the homeland security and immigration, going to build the border wall. So there's that. There's also the there's also the tax cuts for the incredibly wealthy, and you right there, I think that should already tell you about who is actually benefiting from the and how can this be turned into profit for certain people. I think that is exactly what really is at the heart of the bill. All while, like, I think Tuna Man right there said it best: took from the poor and gave to the rich. I think we're seeing we're seeing just the we're seeing basically the public sector shrinking. I think it is becoming more privatized, and I also do believe that at the same time, all our tax money is going towards these highly specified and, let's frankly, militaristic projects, all while we have to foot the bill. People in, like, I should say, the working class have to foot the bill, while those at the very top don't. And that's just, I think that is closer to like a Marxist view of how these things pass, but I do think it is accurate. I mean, you really just look at it, you could see that just public works in general, since basically the Reagan era onward, have kind of gone downhill while the private sector has thrived. And I just think this is perfectly in line with that. But that is my view. That is my view on it.
And the other part of that is that it's like, where is the money coming from? Well, Trump won because he got the billionaire vote. Meaning he got a lot of money to influence a lot of other people that don't know how to think well. I mean, that's part of what getting the billionaire vote is about. You get the money. And here's the sad thing is that maybe the most interesting thing that came out of all this was Elon Musk, who threatened to use his money, in primaries against people that voted for the bill, because that's why people voted for the bill, because Trump threatened to primary them if they didn't. So, and for a lot of people, especially in those Western states, it's very tight, and they need that support, or they're not going to win. But we are basically, ruled by the money. And it's really sad because it just, I mean, there is in no way that this bill benefits half the people that are in favor of it. I mean, it benefits a very, very, very small.
I agree.
People. And it's so flat out inconsistent with what Trump ran on, the principles that he ran on to lower the debt, yada, yada. You could go on. That there's no reason. I mean, there's nothing sensible about it. It really is just giving millionaires a break and cutting programs, government programs, more government programs.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he
Wait,
paid a lot of
before
lip service.
hey Rex, before we
Oh,
go on, I just want to introduce Ook. Ook, how's it going? Welcome back to our live stream.
welcome.
What's going on?
G'day, me beautiful bastards. How are you?
Roger, man. How you been?
Hey, good, mate. You shaping up all right, mate?
I'm all right. I appreciate you asking. We've got the celebration in a couple of weeks. We got the notification that the remains have been processed and we can go pick them up. Mom's doing okay.
Yeah, that's why I was a bit worried about your mum.
Yeah, I mean she's feeling it right now, because part of it is their anniversary is coming up.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
So that's gonna be a fun day. But,
Just to kind of fill in Rex and Joe, so
hey, Joe.
John's,
Hey, Rex.
Hello.
John's father had passed a couple weeks ago, and we just wanted to make sure that John was okay, and make sure that his or hear how his family is doing. And I certainly understand how his mom could be definitely is going to be in a vulnerable position right now.
Yeah, 40 years. That's a long time to pick up anybody. That's a long time to pick up anybody's socks.
I mean, all you can do is just be there and keep the tissues on standby, mate.
Yeah. Sad, man, but you're doing what you can, right?
Oh, absolutely. And right now, I'm hanging out there. My partner's hanging out there. In fact, my partner and I were working with Mom yesterday, just kind of helping to take care of stuff around the house. We did some cooking, and Mom, as a way of kind of staying connected to Dad, she really wanted to watch some of the Marvel movies because Dad loved those things. So we started with Captain America, and now we're kind of going through this super marathon of every piece of media that's been released through the Marvel Extended Universe. And I have decidedly mixed feelings about it, but it helps her.
That's good that you're doing that for her, man.
Yeah. Because even I can only look at Scarlett Johansson so much. But no, she's gonna be all right. And I appreciate you guys asking about it. And she does extend her love, and she does. If you guys are ever in the States, she promises to give you one American hug, tariff free.
That's very kind of her.
Yes.
Hope she's doing okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she's all right. She will be okay. But right now she's one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, these things take time,
Yeah. What didn't take time was the passing of the big beautiful bill.
Oh, no. Right about that.
I'll put another song link in the comments later. I'll find it. It's one that I played at my mum's funeral, and one that I want played at mine. It's an old Dean Martin song.
Please, thank you. I deeply appreciate you finding this stuff and putting it into the comments section. It's it's noticed and appreciated. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
All right.
I'd do the same for a black fella.
Moving on.
Oh, that's a really old Australian thing. Yeah.
I know.
All right, mate. Keep going.
All right.
Rex was talking about how you poor bastards in Seppo land are becoming commies.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother, man. A lot of stuff. But I'm thankfully doing all right. And so are the people I know and care for. But, we've seen over here, especially, we've seen just a failure of response on the side of authority to deal with these issues. And especially with like the power grid from a few years back, that hasn't been fixed at all either. So, yeah.
But I mean, as far as I can see, that Americans, the way America works, it's fucked from the beginning. You got no chance until you start to change some basic things like pay taxes at a reasonable rate. Stop voting for everything.
Yeah, I really
rampant. What do you call it? Rampant bloody
corruption,
election, and I've forgotten the word. Isn't that a shit? I haven't had a coffee yet.
Lobbying?
Democracy. Rampant democracy with everything doesn't work. You don't vote for who your lawyers are, who your judges are, who your police are.
That is an interesting thought. I would slightly disagree and say I think it's the facade of a democracy. But I would say it's lip service democracy because, there's this Noam. I think he's still alive. He's in a bad condition. Noam Chomsky, if you guys have heard of him, he likes to say that there's only one business party of America.
Yeah,
there's only one. There's only one. Technically, there's two, but they work for the same guys, same business. You're working for profit over people. I don't really think that stance has fallen on hard times. I think it has gone only stronger, and it's being proven right every day, at least in my eyes.
Yeah. What I don't
By the way,
understand
Noam Chomsky was born in 1928, so
Good
he is
grief.
very, very old.
So,
But he's still alive.
Yeah, and even Ralph Nader is in his like mid 80s now, I want to say. But he's still around somewhere. He comes up every once in a while.
Hang on, I've seen that. I saw something he put out last month, I think.
Oh,
Noam
is he
Chomsky
still
or
producing?
Nader?
Nader, I think.
Yeah. Nader.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I saw something, or maybe it was a bit of a documentary on something. Don't know. It's been
we still have some of the older thinkers. They're still around. I think obviously they're waning now, but Jürgen Habermas from the Frankfurt School, I believe he put out an essay not too long ago, and he's well in his 90s. And I think I also think he's very important because he talks about things like liberalism, Marxism, and all other classical philosophical positions. And yeah, they're still around. It's just they've seen a lot, and I think we should pay attention to them more. But well, you know how that is.
Yeah, I pretty much hold the same view as the Bruces at the University of Wallamagoo. But yeah, philosophy is not my strong suit. If I can't hit it, stab it, or shoot it, I really can't be bothered with it.
I think maybe that's
the other big one is fuck it. Got to be able to shag it.
What's a good introduction to Habermas, or maybe even a video interview or something?
A good introduction. Well, are you looking for something like an essay he wrote, a book, or how about a lecture on Habermas? Because I can get you. It depends on what you're looking for.
Good. Lecture's fine.
Okay. There's one by.
It's not the Habermas who did the Bible evidence for God, evidence for the resurrection. Habermas. Different.
Is it Jürgen?
Habermas.
Is it Jürgen Habermas? That's who I'm thinking of.
Gary Habermas is the Bible scholar.
Yes, because I don't. Yes, different Habermases, because the Jürgen one I'm thinking was part of the Marxist school, the Frankfurt school.
Well, Habermas is the Gary Habermas is a whole other thing. So all right.
Wait, is it on?
Talk about that one, and I thought, geez,
is it an insult? Is it an insult nowadays to call? Say again. Was that you, Joe?
I went to high school with a Freddie Habermas.
Maybe that's Jürgen's son. Frederick.
Frederick. Yeah.
By the way, is it an insult to call the Frankfurt School the Marxist school? I guess back then it probably wasn't.
Yeah. Well, it depends, because the Frankfurt School, at least some of the thinkers, because I have not studied all of them. I will admit that I only know the main figures, such as Marcuse and Adorno, and a few others, like I guess associated with them, like Walter Benjamin. But I think it depends on where you stand, because they were critically against the New Left, for instance. The way they envisioned their own project was, they knew Marx had problems and had gaps, and they wanted to fill in those gaps and bring it into the 20th century, and also explain why something like World War II could ever happen this age. And they wanted that. And then when the New Left came along, so we saw people, I should say, especially in the United States, we started seeing like beat culture, and then we saw the counterculture movement. That would be the New Left, and that kind of was really divisive for the Frankfurt School, because they did not like that. They saw it as like controlled opposition because of things like COINTELPRO, and they also saw it as like they were not radical enough. They didn't properly some of them supported Mao, for instance, and the Frankfurt School had basically gone to Marx and stopped with Marx. They didn't support Lenin, no Stalin. They it's complicated. It's pretty complicated, but it really just depends on how you view Marxism, what you think it is, what you think communism is, what side you're on, to put it in a blunt way.
Yeah, I feel like the Frankfurt School is probably getting more relevance and maybe even more mention in certain circles with the rise of what people might consider fascism in America.
Yeah.
They're targeting it. It's basically a big chunk of a anti-Semitic trope these days. The attack on the Frankfurt School, saying, it's I've come across it a few times and had to look it up because I don't have a background in philosophy. And you go, what the hell are they talking about? And you go, what's it called? The something Marxist. But they drag it back to that and then go and change it, of course, to make it into an anti-Semitic something or other. And they go, it's not anti-Semitic because some of them aren't Jewish. And you go, yeah, that won't stop it from being anti-Semitic, though.
I think what you're trying to say is like a lot of people just point to the Frankfurt School and just throw a bunch of ill will and evils towards them. They put words in their mouths and they're like, oh yeah, here they're destroying the youth minds or some other nonsense. I think a lot of people reference them, like especially I've seen a lot of hard right wingers say, for instance, that the universities are teaching the Frankfurt School theorists and just Marxism, and I think that is part of the same crowd that says these things about the Frankfurt School, and I don't think it's accurate at all. Especially since universities actively don't teach that unless you go and seek it up for yourself.
I think
Marxism is the term that
they
I was looking for.
I mean, they do say they basically, try to, kind of, not an insult, but I mean, they make a very kind of simplistic, just jingoistic insults by just calling someone a Marxist. Aaron Massa was mentioning how James Tour, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, accused him of being a Marxist for using opiate of the masses. So on Twitter, you get a lot of people who just basically throw out you're a Marxist,
Words.
commie, socialist, without understanding any of it, and definitely not understanding Marx.
Yeah, I think Sorry, QC. Go on.
No, go ahead.
I was about to say, I think that's Marx's comment. What Aaron just said. Marx's comment on religion, because he said religion is an opiate for the masses. And I just think a lot of people take these kind of buzzwords, they just throw them around, especially on Twitter, that cesspool, and they don't know they don't know like the technical meanings of them.
No, they don't. But
yeah.
But the whole McCarthyism is kind of coming back, and people are. I had posted a tweet about I hope people are not looking at McCarthyism with nostalgia, and I have people responding to it, pointing at McCarthyism with nostalgia.
Unironically.
Red flag, because honestly, I don't think McCarthyism ever left, but there's definitely a resurgence where you just look at someone and accuse them of being a commie, and then there we go, that invalidates their opinion or something. Yeah.
I mean, there is another frightening factor in this. There was a colleague of mine a while ago, his wife did research on education, and since Roe v. Wade in America, like private schooling has really grown on the rise. And so you really have this population that has grown since the 70s immensely. that is sheltered, that sort of is schooled, and sort of their community, everybody sort of revolves around kind of the same set of beliefs. I think that's why, like in the 70s, there were very right-wing people like Pat Buchanan who entered mainstream politics.
Mhm.
But my guess was always they couldn't get more than like 30-40% of the vote. You can get now, Trump gets in the high 40%, and I think a lot of that vote is just, I don't know how to put it better, but a kind of ignorant populace that just votes what certain people tell them to vote, or doesn't vote at all. And, and that group has grown. And that group tends to, not just be private, also have a lot of kids. And again, some of these people, I would consider friends. So I'm not saying they're nasty people. It's just politically, I find it a little bit problematic because it's not like you could knock on their door and swing the vote.
So this is the reason why this whole topic of McCarthyism had come up, at least when I was responding to it. I actually don't know who this guy is, ALX. He has a pretty large following. But Mamdani, who calls himself, I think, a democratic socialist.
Yes.
But I guess he has expressed some positive things about communism. So this guy is bringing up this thing to say that he could be stripped of his U.S. citizenship because he was affiliated with the Communist Party, which he isn't, other totalitarian party or terrorist organization within 5 years of his or her naturalization, saying that you could basically denaturalize a U.S. citizen. And the danger, of course, is that if the government can just make up excuses to just denaturalize someone, especially if there is no due process, that's a real danger. That's a real threat to our liberties. But I responded and said, I hope the MAGA know that you aren't supposed to be nostalgic about McCarthyism. and I get a response, McCarthy was right.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God.
He was right to lie about people, apparently.
That
well, I think
comment.
it's like they obviously don't understood what McCarthyism is, right? It's not just it isn't just trying to get rid of a threat of communism. It's about a witch hunt where a government can just blackball you or sanction you in ways using it as a kind of a way to justify them taking away your rights. And there's certainly a lot of, especially gay people, right, who were kind of marked as communists despite not being communists and having their lives ruined. And we cannot go back to that type of situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that commenter doesn't understand either that Joseph McCarthy was it is really about, like you said, it is really about a witch hunt. It is just pointing to someone and saying, well, I think really it is kind of like an ad hominem because, well, you're going to attack someone for something that they supposedly believe. And you're going to say, well, that makes them, whatever they have to say is irrelevant.
Yeah, because they're lying, because they're communists, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, well, you shouldn't trust them because, he's obviously a red. Don't you know that these are bad people? Or whatever the logic follows. It's a very shifty move, and it's also dishonest and also ignorant because it doesn't want to learn. It will just reject anything it immediately sees as like a threat.
But it's much worse than that. It's much worse than that because it takes the person, turns them into a monster, and then because it dehumanizes the target. It's the same thing about the attacks on the LGBTQI people. Turn them into a monster, make them into pedophiles or rapists or whatever you want to do, make them less than human, and then You can do anything you want to them. And where did we see this again? Yeah, just about 90 years ago, that was getting done, and with a different group, and the result was 6 million people lost their lives because of exactly that same attack.
Well, if you look at the arc of social movements in the United States, whenever there was the desire to try and either curtail already existing rights or prevent the expansion of rights, the othering and the dehumanization of the specific group has always been the modus operandi of the conservative movement. You see it in the concentrating of Japanese citizens during World War II. You see it in the growth of the civil rights movement. You see it in when you other the same-sex marriage argument, and now you see, and as you rightly pointed out, you see it in the trans movement. Fascism and fascist ideology and cultism and cult ideology work best when you have this ethereal opponent that is simultaneously on the ropes but about to win at any moment. And the best way to do that is you have to turn them into a non-human. You have to turn them into this avatar that you can mold into whatever you need for your propaganda in that moment. And the reason why it's easier for Trump to do that today than it has ever been is because you have so much media that is turned into a tribal experience. You can go your entire life and never see a single minute of news that isn't on Newsmax. If you spend your entire time and even your entire expendable income on items that are sold and marketed through the conservative media, you never have to hear any other point of view. And so Trump knows that he can feed information, and the conservative media knows that they can feed information to Trump. And so they can keep their power because, as I was talking about before we came on the stage, if you keep enough of the population on your side, doggedly in your camp, then you know that you don't even have to win the argument. You just have to be enough of a dog in a manger to keep your point, to keep your policies relevant. And if you can make it clear that you can credibly primary a representative, then even if they don't agree with you, you can keep them in line out of the fear of losing that power.
And this person, the next person, I like his handle, Chance the Gardener. But McCarthyism slowly spread of communist scourge. We need to bring it back in full effect. So, yeah. But first, we need to jail this commie scum. He's obviously a communist. His neighbor told us that he's a communist, and he's just trying to undermine our Constitution. They just don't really understand the point.
No, they don't understand that you're basically using their own weapons against them. You're right. We'll take care of these bad guys, but actually, someone said that you might be a secret commie, so you have to go now.
Yeah, but there's no real logic to it. It's more like the logic of team rivalries or something, and that is another part of the Trump success, though, is creating the enemy within, whether it's quote unquote illegal immigrants or communists / liberals. There's a real hatred, right?
Yeah,
for somebody's philosophical viewpoint, political viewpoint. That's kind of and he's created that, and he takes advantage of that, and.
Yeah, one thing, when he was kind of using trans to do this, I don't think it was as effective because not too many people are directly affected by trans and they don't see or get exposed to trans too much. But I think the shift is to the immigrants, and I think it has been very effective. because there are so many people who see immigrants or who they think are immigrants, and they just assume they're illegals, right? Undocumented illegals, and they see, let's say, someone who looks different, and they just assume it's illegal. Someone cuts them off, or it's an illegal. And so I think that has been a lot more effective. And I feel like now the focus has been about demonizing the immigrant population, especially with the ICE and the expansion of ICE. And you now have this very, very visible scapegoat that they can use to essentially blame everything. So, it's because of the illegal immigrants that we have all these crime and unemployment, and all our Medicaid is going to the illegal immigrants, and now we've gotten rid of them. So now we'll have a lot more benefits for citizens because we no longer have this parasite and this kind of scapegoating of the immigrants. It should be very, very sound very familiar to people who are familiar with history of what happened in Germany.
Oh, I completely agree. It
I
is always
got-
easy. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to ask for the Americans in the room, did anyone think that the beautiful bill, BBB, big, beautiful, 3 Bs. Yeah, right. Sorry, I went off on a porn track then. Did anyone think that wasn't going to pass? I mean, it was a foregone conclusion, I thought.
The votes were thin enough, and the budget hawks who ended up caving were the sliver of hope that I had maintained was through the budget hawks. But in the end, I agree with you that if you take a look at the coverage, it did seem pretty inevitable. But they could only lose 3 votes. And in the end, they just did enough horse trading to get it across the finish line. But
I mean, the thing is that there was a time when they had some no votes from the Republicans, and it actually seemed like that,
the budget
it
hawks
might actually hold out.
Yeah, the budget hawks.
Didn't they get them on board with a bit of Trump merch? That was all it was. Just a bit of Trump. All they were holding out for is a bit of Trump merch. And you go, yay, I've got a hat.
Yes.
I'm for it.
So at some point, there were at least 5 Republicans that had voted no, kind of in the middle of the votes. So I had posted this that, about Sodom and Gomorrah, where, for the sake of 10 righteous people, God said he wasn't going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And we couldn't find half that. We couldn't find half the 10 from Republicans. And, after I posted this, of course, we lost all of them, right? They all went over because, like Blark said, Trump came in and kind of twisted their arm and said, hey, I'll give you some free merch. How's that?
I didn't think it'd pass so fast.
Are a good investment.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I really don't understand. Well, in my way of thinking, I don't think America has ever really gotten out of the McCarthy and the Reds under the bed way of thinking. It's that ingrained that it's sort of like a cultural icon.
You just got to scream socialist.
Yeah.
And everyone runs away, ignoring the fact that the military is socialism, the police is socialism, hospitals is socialism. Let's ignore that. Roads are socialism.
Public works, public infrastructure. That's the thing. I think
socialism. Damn socialists.
Okay, if you're going to keep using facts, logic, and reason to make your argument,
we're just going to have to work out.
Look,
I did want to go back to the comment.
Communism is the best type of government as long as you ignore all of its problems.
Well,
I once had my old Marist brother Tudor told me that communism would work as long as it was run by a computer and people had lobotomies. And I sort of sat down and thought about it. And okay, if a computer worked it might work. Yeah, okay, that would be completely fair, no emotions in it. But then you're stifling the human need that most people want is to be a little bit better, to do a little bit better, have a little bit more. And that's one of the big things I see about the problem I had with that is I came back to him and said, but human nature makes people want to strive for more, usually. And he said, yeah, that's why it'll never really work. That's why it's a waste of,
Well,
there has to be
I think
social.
I think that's where Marx is. The weakness in Marx is, in terms of what he thought was going to happen. But his power is being able to recognize the kind of the dehumanization and the isolation. I think he uses a different term.
Alienation.
Alienation, yeah, alienation. That comes from capitalism. His critique of capitalism and of kind of how the market forces work. I mean, it's just you can't deny it, and it's very powerful. But his conclusion of what he thinks is inevitably is going to happen, did not take into account what technology would do, what entertainment would do, what all the other things would do. So I think he's flat out wrong in terms of what's going to happen. But his critiques of capitalism still stands.
There's also the big mistake he made in the processing, in the process of moving to communism. You take over the means of production. You have one person who sort of looks after that, and then it's his job to hand the reins back to the people. That never happens. It just doesn't. All of the atrocities, the person who's needed to do that job is not a person who will ever hand back the reins of power, and all the atrocities they've committed means that if they do that, then they're in a whole world of hurt at the end of it. So, they never get to that extra step.
Yeah, I think it is very hopeful, and let's not forget he did take from Hegel, so his conception of the end of history was communism. It was the stateless, classless society, and that. But you have to admit, like that Hegelian aspect where he just says, "Well, we're actually going to move towards this, and this is where it's going to end." I think that's a big error in itself. And I think it is a bit oversimplified how one actually gets to that point. And that's actually one of the, I'm glad you said that, Blard, because you've reminded me that is actually one of the issues Lenin addresses. Because Lenin disagreed with Marx in that sense because, well, let's say you have the revolution of the proletariat tomorrow. Okay. How are you going to maintain power against other factions, other groups? But where's the power in that? Like, let's say you're Lenin and you set up your government and you're like, okay, here, we're going to follow what I believe. We're going to spread out socialism because socialism is supposed to be international, as Lenin believes. How are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to take it off? And how are you going to get to that extra step? Well, obviously, you need some kind of force or power on your side, or you're going to lose control of what you have. Someone's going to march through the door with their army, with their guns, and guess what? You lost. So, Lenin addresses the practical issues that are within Marx. But I think he does agree with Marx's critique of the political economy and what it does to people who work, what capital does to the relations between people, et cetera, et cetera. The commodification of labor, of how people see each other, all of that. I think Marx's strength, just like QC said, belongs in his analysis of what capitalism was and not in his solution to, let's say, a solution to it, say communism, or go on the way to communism. Like for Lenin, it was socialism. You have to jump to socialism, and then it goes to communism, for instance.
But And maybe that's right. But do we even need to think about communism at the moment? I mean, if we had a world that was sort of just a liberal socialist ideal where everybody had health care, nobody was suffered, from poverty. What more would be missing? Maybe we have to work on prison reform, but I think a lot of, the social ills would go away. It wouldn't really have to be equality or even equity as much as lack of misery. I mean, poverty has very dramatic effects. I mean, it's highly correlated with criminality, correlated with a lot of social ills, mental illness. I mean, you name it, there's a correlation. So alleviating that, you wouldn't really have to spread things around equally. But I don't know. Maybe that's a dumb economic idea.
Poverty is also highly correlated to religiosity. The poorer and people are, the more likely they are to be religious.
Because no matter how much I suffer now, I will be rewarded later.
Yeah. You reach for some hope in the in this terrible world, and if your life is actually pretty damn good, there's you don't need that. So making people poorer and
I live in this university town, Moscow, Idaho, and there's it's a very beautiful part of the world. A lot of people come here just for the outdoors stuff, and they work, as waiters or waitresses or wherever they can make money, and they have very simple lives. I mean, a lot of them are Buddhists or Stoics of some sort, so they do have a kind of religiosity, even if it's not a sort of form of theism. And it really doesn't take a whole lot to make them happy. I mean, but I think there's a problem with, there are some people where, they don't have quite the skills that these simple people I'm thinking of in Moscow have. They can't make money, and then what do? Your alternatives are bleak, and there are a lot of people. And let's just face it, there are a lot of bad jobs out there and very few good jobs out there. So, if we could solve some problems like that, give people something to do, a way to make money, a lot of the social issues, I think, would go away. Maybe it would be a step towards something grander, but it wouldn't need to be.
I think Marx does address that, though. Marx basically would curtail that and say, well, the system is still being upheld. And, okay, what does it actually take to uplift people and better their lives? If we're working in a capitalist system, that's going to require resources, specifically money. And who has the money? Is it really you and I that have the money? Who are the owners? Who are the ones that own the factories? Not us, the workers. They're the ones with the capital to spend it on. They could, in theory, I see what you're saying, benefit people like us in the working class. But I think that's a very idealistic picture. And it has happened in history before. Like in Chile, we had people like Salvador, I believe Salvador Allende, who did like a thing in cyber socialism, and it was working. But the only problem is he pissed off the richest people in the country, and then the CIA came in and overthrew him. So it's happened before, but like on a real practical scale, like let's be realistic for a second. I don't think that's really going to happen unless some major changes are made. Yeah. And like obviously we have, if you know any of the history, like in let's just South and Central America, just them, and not even across the world. Like there's more in Africa. So I'm going on it right now with Traore in Burkina Faso, but people who have tried to give back to the people, build free housing. They nationalize the industries. What happens is they usually just get taken over by the CIA, and corporations come in, and there we go. It's privatized again, and the third world is plundered. So I just think that's a very idealistic image to say, well, we could just give people this and look, they're happy with what they do. Just give them a job, find something for them, take care of them. I think that's very easy to say, but how one gets there is very difficult. And it has a really rocky history because there are people who will actively stomp it out as soon as you try to go and get it there,
Yeah, by the way, I mean, I agree with you. But even if we get to that utopia point, just because human nature, I don't think it'll last very long. There's going to be someone who cannot, be in a situation where everyone is, self-directed and creative and, not exploiting one another. Someone's going to want to exploit someone.
Oh,
So I don't think it'll last very long.
QC, allow me to add on that. I don't necessarily believe there is a human nature, but I will say that where there is gain and where the social conditions are there for you to like triumph over someone and take their resources, I think that is likely going to happen. Putting aside human nature in that debate for now.
I'm wondering if, because from my perception, a lot of it comes from viewing resources as a zero-sum game. I can only have power if I take power away from you. I can only have gold if I take it away from you. In other words, that zero-sum view of resources as finite rather than as an abundance mentality. And I'm wondering if I'm wondering if even idealistically, let's just speak about hypotheticals from now, if it's possible to foster that shift in perception that resources, we have an abundance mentality rather than a scarcity mentality.
Okay, I can actually maybe answer that if you'll allow me to, or at least pitch my own answer. I do believe it is possible because I believe these things are not innate, natural human essences, and they're not universal. I don't believe in that. I more so believe that we live in a particular time and place that puts emphasis on these kinds of values. So we can even look at what it means to be a master and a slave, because it's much the same thing. I mean, for there to be a slave, someone needs to be a master and dominate them. It can't the same be said about, like, that's basically the same relation you just highlighted about taking one's resources in a zero-sum game. But I believe that thing is not a fixed unity. Like, it is not innate in humans, despite its long history. I believe it can be conquered, and there is at least some tangible evidence that we can see that can support other points of view, just like abundance. So, like, for instance, we are taught the myth of scarcity, and there's actually a lecture on this by Wes Cecil, but he says, for instance, that, okay, look at all the food we waste a year. We've gone to the point where we're actually wasting like trillions of pounds of food. And realistically, we could actually feed the hungry. We could take these to other countries. We could do more with it. We could turn it into compost. We could do a lot with it, but instead it's going to be wasted because to do those other things, it requires a lot of profit. It requires resources, money. And, well, look at the resources we farmed out of the earth already. We can build mega cities. We can have factory farms that keep producing and producing. And whether there is a natural limit to it or not is not the point. The point is we could do better, and we're still not doing that. And we could also change our values to match that. So we're not living in a, well, here, eat this because everything is scarce. Like that is just something that's based on values and belief. That is not something that is, just materialistic. Here it is. The earth has given much already. And Marx talks about that as well.
I think that concept of scarcity is too limited, because it's not a scarcity in terms of the total amount of food. I mean, I think if we took all the amount of food that we could generate or grow, there's probably plenty per person. But it's about the distribution of those resources.
I agree.
Right? That's what causes a scarcity, not the actual available amount, but the distribution.
Oh, yeah, it's political. But once you look at the political, what is it based on? It's based on values. Why is it that we prefer not to throw away this food as opposed to giving it to someone?
That's something so it's not a scarcity. It's not a scarcity problem.
It is a scarcity. It just is a scarcity that, like, not in physical materiality, but it's a scarcity mindset. It's a scarcity as in, well, guess what? Well, what if I want to skim a little off the top? This is for me. These guys don't deserve that. Or what I think is more accurate is the picture of, well, I can make a profit because it's easier to throw this away, for instance, than to give it to someone else. It's not entirely based on what is materially there. It is a political.
So,
It is a
so
political
human
mindset.
nature, right? The
Yeah.
human
Well,
nature
okay.
that you said
I don't know
doesn't
about
exist.
I wouldn't say human nature. I wouldn't go that far, but that's
Well,
another story.
so here's the question, Rex. So hypothetically, I've busted my butt and I've got my paycheck and I have bought my food, but I look at this other person who's going hungry. So then if I have the mindset of, well, they just need to work harder.
Mhm.
The reason why they don't have enough is because they haven't done enough. Okay, I was wondering if your viewpoint could speak to that perception.
I think that is just, like I said, I think that is just a value-based mentality. I don't necessarily believe that one is accurate because, it's easy to look at a homeless person, for instance, and be like, oh, or have talked to someone who is of an older generation, and they'll say, oh, look, clearly they were lazy and they didn't work hard enough. I don't believe that is the case. I believe it is a lot more complicated than just, well, you should have tried harder. This is the fault of your own actions. Down all the way down, all the way down.
I'm not advocating for that point of view. I disagree
Yeah,
with that
yeah.
point of view. But
Of course. I disagree with it too. I disagree with it too.
That is sort of the prevailing counter argument, and I would say that would be part of what's at the core of what keeps resource distribution.
Yeah, exactly. There's a mental. I never disagreed with you. I think there's a mental and philosophical.
I just want to be clear that I'm kind of playing the devil's advocate / jackass, and I'm not trying to actually advocate for this, but to just sort of put that question out there as as the thought experiment.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It is something that is mental and political, and it's value based. That's just a mere perspective. Like that is like I said about the homeless guy. If you look at him and think, and the first thought you have is, well, he should have worked harder, or she should have worked harder, then that can possibly tell me where you're from, where you grew up. It's possible to trace it there and what you believe, because I really do think it's just a matter of values. What are your values? Those values are not the same as mine. I don't agree with that point of view, and neither do you. But yeah, I'm saying that can still be accounted for in the scarcity, because the scarcity, to me, scarcity is there's also a mental and philosophical element to it. It's not just a material thing. But if you're trying to say that it is not based on material at all, and it's a political and value based thing, then I totally agree with you. I'm not disagreeing, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Parents, primal fear of loss drives them. Primal fear of loss, that is interesting. Can you explain to me what a primal fear of loss actually is? Because, like I said, I'm very skeptical on the notion of what is human nature, because as soon as we start talking about it, they actually mention it. Too many are afraid of social exclusion for dissenting or even questioning predominant. I agree. No, Aaron, I totally agree. People are very scared about having their values challenged or even changed. I think that is part of it, but is that to say that those values are natural to every human? I don't believe that is the case.
Well, so let me ask you this. So for someone who is very rich, who's a billionaire, why do they have to continue to build wealth where, they're a multi-billionaire, where, they have enough money where they couldn't possibly spend within hundreds of lifetimes? Why keep building that wealth?
I would answer that. Oh, if the question is for me, I would answer that they grew up in a time in a specific place in history where capitalism is the dominant mode. And capitalism, one of the things that sneaks into capitalism, one of the values is that having profit is good. You always want money, always be the rich man. And so even when people have that billionaire status, like Elon Musk, for instance, the only thing they know, and basically the only thing they've been told that matters, maybe even to the extent of life, is that, hey, I must make money because ever since I was a kid, I was told I should make money. Or it's a value thing. And
yeah, it's
I think
it's
it's totally. Yeah, it's totally. I mean, and I honestly, part of me honestly thinks that is part of perhaps even a slave mindset too, because even when you have all the money in the world, if you feel like you need more money and you need more and need more and need more, you are a slave to your money. You are a slave to what other people say. Like, forget about your resources for now, pal. You need to work on yourself mentally. But
Right.
that is just my perspective, and I'd be okay with a few million.
Yeah.
But
I'll take half of that in cash.
with that being said, I'll be okay with a few million. But hell, I'll never find myself at the end where I'll just be a slave to money and say, well, I need more and more and more and more. You know, I think, but I really think that is what a lot of billionaires have too. I mean, the only thing they know how to do is make more money. And once you have a lot of money, it is easy to make money. And so what do? They are told basically that the only thing that matters in life is to get money. So that's what they do. It's a very shallow life, I believe.
Let me switch a little bit. I did want to go back to what John had said earlier about what caused the Republicans to essentially vote for this, despite it really hurting their constituents, and also I think despite just not necessarily that they're going to lose donors from it, but because of the threat from Trump. Trump, despite being essentially a lame duck, right? He technically can't run again, but who knows? So, but despite that, he wields quite a bit of political power because of what he can do. That he can kind of get his base to go after any one of these politicians where he could primary them, and even if like he won't succeed because there are a lot of times where he endorsed someone else and that other candidate did not win. Despite that, there is this kind of fear of him, of what he can do, and I think that's really what drives or drove a lot of these Republicans who. I think there's like one guy who voted no and like ran away because he knew he was
Oh
going
yeah.
to. I can't remember his name.
He voted no and then immediately announced that he wasn't running for re-election.
Yeah, there's that, right? There's also those, and despite that, they still caved. They still, the fear was so much. So it does seem like it's not an issue of money that's coming into play, but about fear from what Trump can do, which is kind of amazing, right? That someone has that kind of power over these lawmakers. Do you agree,
Yeah.
or
No, I can agree. If you're asking me, or if you're asking me for my 2 cents.
for everyone? Yeah, for everyone. Joe as well, Blarg, Ook, John.
I'm trying to think of the name of the person who. Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, was the guy who voted no for the big beautiful bill, and then announced immediately that was not running again.
But didn't he
Tail.
change
Yeah.
his vote?
He probably did.
Yeah,
I
even though
mean,
he wasn't running again.
Well, because again, you want to have a post political career, and if you've spent your professional life in the world of politics, then you want, even if you're not running again, you still want to be seen as the elder statesman and somebody that can be brought to give an advisory capacity. You still want to be invited to all the cool parties. You still want, if how you identify yourself is as a part of the political machine, if you get pushed out, then you have to reimagine yourself. You have to come up with a new identity. And that means that you have to potentially give up power. And power is a very intoxicating motivator.
Wait, so when does this end? Does Shady Vance take on the mantle and he becomes the Trump, or is it Trump Jr., or will this die with Trump?
So part of the theory is that it's never going to completely die because Trump won the second election. that kind of creates the cloud of viability as a political ideology and movement. So it's sort of like how you express things and that schoolyard bully mentality. But Trump has this weird charisma and ability to whip up the base that Vance doesn't have. And there doesn't seem to be a natural successor to the throne. So one theory, and this is the one that I really hope is the most accurate one, is that as a movement, it dies with Trump, but as an ideology, it sticks around as background static for conservatives, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. That's part of one of the sociological views that you talked about last time I was on the stream, and I think I told you about Max Weber and how he talks about a charismatic leader.
Yeah.
Often, when a charismatic leader dies, the movement often dies with them because no one is there to take their place. So maybe, who knows? If you're hopeful, keep your hopes high, right? But
sure. I mean, let's pull the obvious examples out of history, where you've got Mussolini, you've got Stalin, you've got Hitler, you've got Castro, where when they left the stage, by natural or by force, their ideologies are still around, but they don't have nearly the kind of political clout.
Oh yeah,
and
I can agree with that.
Yeah, so that's why I'm hopeful, but also concerned at the same time. Which is sort of a paradoxical statement, I suppose. Optimistically pessimistic.
With any of this Trump stuff, he's not going to get away with half of what Trump will get away with. I can't even envision anybody, certainly not his sons. I don't really see anybody on the political scene. None of those Fox media folk would work. They wouldn't get away with it. Trump, I can't explain it. He does have a kind of allure that's inexplicable. I don't get it.
He knows how to talk. He knows how to make simple and direct statements, and I feel like that grabs a lot of people.
Yeah,
simple and sometimes in the worst possible way. Because I think a lot of the times it is oversimplification, but he can also make. Let's be real. He's a showman. He's also used to the camera. He's used to having that kind of actor persona. He knows how to play people. He knows how to put on a show, and I think that's what allures people to him.
No, I agree, and I think from linguistically, I would say that ironically, his unpolished ability to speak, to kind of speak to your point, Rex, is that his ability to sound and come across like a normal person. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you look at politicians who have advisors that will tell them exactly what word to say and what tone and pitch to use, one of the most devastating things that Trump did in his first bid for president was he absolutely nailed Marco Rubio to the wall verbally when he said, all this guy has is a bunch of talking points. All this guy has is a bunch of talking points. And Rubio's response was to go into a talking point. It just completely fell into the trap. I think the lack of preparedness, or the way his ability to sound like he doesn't prepare, is his greatest strength. And I think so much of professional politicians are so locked into the mindset of, I have to present a certain way, that it keeps them from having that level of authenticity. So I think you might be right there, Rex. I think that might be how Trump kind of verbally, linguistically broke through.
Mm-hmm. At least it's a fraction of it, I would say. Joe, do you have anything to add?
He also has this incredible media history. I mean,
yeah, Joe, maybe
I started following him in the late 80s.
So it sounds like people's consensus is that this dies with Trump.
Let's hope so.
Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
the rising
And
fascism.
I guess the consensus is that J.D. Vance probably doesn't have what Trump has. I mean, I
No,
think
no.
he tries hard, I think, to be a Trump-like, but he just can't. He doesn't have it.
He doesn't have the juice.
Yeah, the problem is though, the more this sort of goes on, the more this sort of Overton window keeps moving over to the right, over to the right, over to the right.
Yeah.
And you get this creeping fascism sort of underlying this behavior. So, yeah, even when Trump's gone, the stench will still permeate the political discourse.
We'll probably hang around for a while. That's what I'll say. But it won't ever be the same. But like I said,
Yeah.
let's not prophesize about this, because really life can just throw a wrench at us at any moment. So let's see what happens. Right?
The only way I see a way to significantly turn things around is things have to get catastrophically bad first.
Accelerationism.
Yeah, essentially, how did Germany get out of Nazism? Yeah. And
well,
catastrophically
bad.
They lost.
And it wasn't pretty either.
I mean, a lot of the beginnings of leftist countries too have also done the same thing. They take the accelerationist philosophy is exactly as what you said, Blard. It's literally, things need the castle needs to fall before we can build anew again, right? It needs to get so bad, things will change, and then there we go. There's a new beginning.
Yeah,
but
well,
if you look
I don't think in this case it's a matter of deliberately driving it that way. Is that until a massive blow up occurs of some sort, you just can't see a way back out of it. Like, a path in the dark. Yeah, that's my sort of thinking, that it just, people won't be able to turn away from it until they can clearly see how bad the situation's got. So, yeah, maybe the big beautiful bill is a terrifically good thing for helping that along, because
for the future,
you take 10 million people off of health, 10 million Republicans off of health care.
But
that is definitely going to hurt.
A lot of these things won't hit for a few years. People won't feel it for a few years.
Yeah,
it won't hit until after the midterms.
Right.
Someone thought that through.
Yeah,
maybe even longer. Maybe the next president will get blamed for it.
Yeah, it'll take a little.
Go ahead.
Ironically, I saw a speech by Rand Paul that I thought was kind of an interesting one. Him complaining about the bill and talking about the fact that it's pointless to look at 10-year forecasts, because they just assume that everything runs the way it is, and when you front end all of the spending and back end all of the savings, it's all rubbish, because those savings won't be there in 10 years' time, the way they sort of talked about. And you go, oh, dear God, I'm agreeing with Rand Paul.
Yeah.
What's the world coming to?
Aaron.
Let me just ask Steve-O, because I brought him on, because he made a comment that Vance has some charisma, but not enough.
I mean, he does have a little bit. He's not just a stick in the mud. He does seem to have some relatability to people just based on his background, but he's no Trump. He doesn't have that lasting, So
you can tell a lot by people's eyes. You can see what they may be addicted to.
Oh God.
Can you tell who's who here?
Oh my God.
I'm guessing heroin is RFK Jr.
Yeah.
I think it's Trump.
Meth is Patel.
Yeah, meth is easy.
Yeah.
Ketamine is
Adderall
easy
is
too.
Adderall is Trump.
Trump.
Trump, yeah.
Beer is that? I like beer.
It's
Oh,
Hexeth. It's
Justice
Hexeth.
Kavanaugh.
Oh, Pete
No, it's
Hexeth.
Hexeth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell
He's
because
RFK.
now cocaine is one I can't figure out right off the top of my head.
What? Which one?
Cocaine.
Ketamine, is that Stephen Miller? Ketamine.
I just assumed it
Yeah, I
was
think it is.
Yeah.
DJ TJ,
Okay.
the Donald Jr.
I
The
don't
eyes
think
look like
ketamine,
him.
Yeah, I don't think ketamine is DJ TJ. Although that's
No,
the
no,
first
not
one.
ketamine. I meant cocaine. Ketamine
Okay.
is
Ketamine is
Musk. Yeah.
Miller.
Yeah, that's Elon Musk.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But I always like to say, couch is hell of a drug.
I did make the suggestion that what Couchboy needs to get to have more impact is more eyeliner.
So
There's a little bit more. Yeah.
to Steve-O's point about JD Vance having some charisma, keep in mind he was an elected official. Like, he did get elected to office, so, and you have to have at least some charisma, some ability to connect with people. So
if you got a billionaire behind you,
Yeah.
That helps.
that helps
well, yes,
a lot.
It
And then
does.
that billionaire introduces you to Trump, and then Trump endorses you because it's billionaire saying, "Hey, take my guy."
Right. Now, I don't know that from personal experience. I would love to find out from personal experience whether or not having a billionaire at your back helps. But he does at least have some ability to talk to and interact with people. I've seen a lot of different clips of him, and most of them, he is a weirdo. But he does, like, when he thinks the cameras aren't on, he's a little bit more human. When you can actually catch him in candid moments. There are a few clips that I've seen of him. Now, he's still a wackadoodle, and he still has no place in civilized society. But I would just kind of wanted to speak to Steve-O's point.
The guy is bright. There's no doubt about that. He's a smart guy, but he comes without a spine.
Yes.
Yes.
So he's not a chordate. So I think he's more closely related to jellyfish than human. So yeah, basically he's smart enough to say whatever's necessary to get him moving forward in life. It just doesn't come with any morality.
Yeah.
So when he thought having a spine was to his benefit, he got a spine. When he called Trump, when he said he was a never Trumper and called Trump a fascist, he thought that was going to make him more electable or more popular. It didn't work out. So now
he has to be more moral than I am, because he's a Christian and I'm not.
And then he did this amazing trick of bending right over and shoving his head up his own ass, which was just kind of amazing. Maybe that's why his eyes look so weird. Things he's seen.
Well, he did write a book, the Hillbilly Elegy, where I think he kind of tried to manufacture this kind of common man type of position, where he had he kind of created this persona where he had this background of the common man, and he knows what they are going through. At least that's what he had tried.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of factor into the charisma part.
Did he go to Yale?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the commoner from
totally
Yale.
the common man.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
If I went to Yale, wow, I'm probably not a layman.
Yeah, okay, man.
He worked his way out of poverty and drugs too. That's part of the story.
Oh yes,
yeah. You're right. The success story that he did all himself too. Yeah, there we go. No help, no rich parents, nothing. Yeah.
And I guess that kind of factors into, like I said, about charisma, because he relates to the gullible types that don't think too hard, and it makes him seem like he's one of them. Like he
Well,
just
I
seems like
think
he's an old person.
I think he's got a bit of osmosis from Trump in that regard. I don't recall him
True.
being particularly popular, and I don't know that he was necessarily a national name before becoming vice president. Um, Before he hitched his wagon onto Trump. So I think whatever popularity and charisma he has now is just standing in Trump's shadow.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I'll concede to that. I'll agree to that.
Yeah, he's kind of like what's his name? That is it? I think John Kennedy. Uh, is he a senator or is he
You
a
talking about Ted Kennedy?
no? John Kennedy. He's like a
Oh, mine's from
Republican.
Louisiana. Yeah.
Yeah, Louisiana. Yeah, so he does this whole kind of this folksy thing,
Oh
and,
yeah,
and
he's well known for that.
yeah, but he went to like Oxford. He like graduated magna cum laude on at like a pretty prestigious school and all that. So he's a very well educated person, but he goes on and he talks like he's some yokel, and because that's his persona.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it's appealing to the common person. Hey, look, I'm
Yeah.
just like you, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, and this may sound cynical, but it's more like the lowest common denominator.
I think it really is too. That's how you drum. That's how you drum up a lot of support, though. You try to say, "Hey, I know your struggles. I know what you've been through, so I will be the best person to, in theory, help you." But you know how that works out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Since we're kind of like we've kind of devolved into ragging on politicians, let and we're kind of at the end of time. I did want to I did want to talk about your essay, Rex.
Oh,
Especially because I think it'd be kind of good if you could, and also because Joe had read it. So it might be interesting to hear his feedback. But I did want to have you maybe kind of give some background on what metaphilosophy is, and also like the place where you had published it, the Carolingian. I'm not sure what that
the
was. So
Carolingian
yeah, so
or
maybe you could
in
let me
Lingian.
just
Mhm.
yeah, let me just put that up, and then so maybe you can give us a little background on your essay and what led you to that.
Well, one night actually, while I was busy doing something else, I was thinking about the branch of metaphilosophy. And for those who don't know, metaphilosophy is a philosophy of philosophy. I think
That's
it is really controversial, but a philosophy of philosophy should reveal some things already. Uh, it's basically it's looking into the inner workings or perhaps the ground of what philosophy is before philosophy can take off. So if philosophy tries to investigate a lot of different branches, like if we assume it is a tree and we have aesthetics on one branch, ethics on one branch, epistemology on one branch, meta philosophy would, in a way, be like, okay, well, what is within that tree? What are the very makings of that tree, and how do they get these? Like, what meta philosophy is basically, like I said, a philosophy of philosophy that attempts to answer the question of, well, what is philosophy? What are the motivations of philosophy, which is a social question? And yeah, it's kind of a controversial field because many people do not actually believe it is a thing at all. And I am one of those because I truthfully believe that metaphilosophy attempts to do what metaphysics has already done. And so I don't pay my tributes to Heidegger here, but Heidegger says, for instance, that philosophy has its roots. The very ground of it is born out of metaphysics. So we cannot escape metaphysics. Anything we talk about, and even in language too, this extends to language, also social interactions. In a way, it presupposes a metaphysical ground that there is, in fact, something there, that there is a fact, like a concrete reality we can talk about. And we build our suppositions, or our suppositions are that, and we build on top of that. And in a way, I take that view because it makes sense. The way Heidegger conceived of it too is that it is ontological, that they are both in bed together, and here's where we build. Here's where the tree sprouts from. It sprouts from the dirt. That is metaphysics. And what I
Wait,
do,
so is your position that basically philosophy is meta philosophy?
I apologize. That is not my position, but I do believe that metaphilosophy is metaphysics. And so, in a way, yes, you can say that. But to say metaphilosophy would also be to obscure it a little bit, because there's differentiation between it. So we can talk about what is ethical, for instance, like in ethics. But if we were to talk about meta ethics, it would be okay. So, well, why do we have ethics? What is the meaning of ethics? It sort
Wait,
of
so
changes the question.
you briefly mentioned language, right? And
Mhm.
one of the most famous one would be Wittgenstein.
Oh
So
yeah,
would you say his meta philosophy is really just part of metaphysics?
specifically Wittgenstein and the way he conceived it, or the way I conceived of it.
Well, with Wittgenstein and how he conceived it, you would
I don't think.
categorize him as being metaphysics.
I think. I think we should be careful here, because the early Wittgenstein and later Wittgenstein would believe different things. So, firstly, I'd say the early Wittgenstein would probably say that is nonsense. What's the point of talking about it, since we can't exactly prove or point to it? It is just a very abstract idea. And he'll say, look, our language limits us to where we can talk about here. There's like a barrier almost, and that's the early Wittgenstein. The later Wittgenstein, the investigations, the blue book and even the brown book, mid to late Wittgenstein, would probably be more open about it and just say, look, we can ask questions from all these angles. Whether we have a sufficient answer to them is another thing. But I do not think he would characterize it in the way that Heidegger does. If that is what you're asking, because Wittgenstein, he didn't want to bother himself with like a totalizing system. He didn't want to have um, build himself a view of the world like, let's say, we talked about Kant last time, like Kant would. So I don't think Wittgenstein would have agreed to that. And metaphilosophy as a term is pretty recent as well. And I don't think Wittgenstein was around to really see the discourse flourish around it. But if we're talking about my specific view on what metaphilosophy is, then I'd say yes, Wittgenstein is metaphilosophical, because he does talk about metaphysics, whether he wants to distance himself from it or not, because you can't distance yourself from metaphysics. To even speak a language is to presuppose certain things. For one, it's presupposing that you can understand me, or that miscommunication is also a factor. And with that comes other baggage. And to me, that's metaphysical. And so, if I could sum it up, the point of the essay is, it is called The Flaws of Metaphilosophy, specifically because metaphilosophy, those who are in favor of metaphilosophy, try to kind of delimit like a kind of new ground, and say, hey, look, metaphilosophy is its own thing. But I don't believe that is the case. I believe metaphysics is perfectly capable of having the exact same problems and the potential answers as metaphilosophy. It really is the same discourse, just how do you frame the questions?
This is that's close to how I summarized. After I read the article, I thought, well, let me try to express, what I think is my takeaway from
Mhm.
reading it is. And I just wrote 3 sentences. One was metaphilosophy is not really an area of philosophy, or not a new area at any rate. And then I thought there were at least 2 points that you made to defend this. One was that if you have a metaphysics, you can answer metaphilosophical questions. And another is that and this is a different point I thought you made at the end, that metaphilosophical questions are a way of approaching metaphysics or ethics or aesthetics. So it's not really like something different from ethics. It's a kind of gateway toward doing ethics, formulating certain kinds of questions that are questions in ethics, or broadly speaking, I think you would probably say metaphysics.
That's exactly it. If I ask you a question of like, what is the meaning of ethics? That is not necessarily in ethics, but that would be the same as looking at it from a metaphilosophical view and from a metaphysical view. Because if we suppose that metaphysics is the ground from which it all springs, well then, where is metaphilosophy? Where does metaphilosophy fit in that? Is it outside of philosophy? That sounds a little bit absurd if you ask me. I believe it is all, well, not monolithic. It is in the same ground. It still takes place within metaphysics. That was what I was really trying to get at. And undeniably, like I said, I draw from Heidegger. I draw from people like Heidegger and Derrida.
So, Joe, do you agree with the assessment, with the essay?
It's a tough question for me because I spent most of my life doing metaphysics, but I'm kind of since retirement, I've been working on Hume, and I'm in this sort of
Hume, love Hume.
Waters of this like anti metaphysics, but
the analytic tradition, I see.
This is what I would add to the discussion, though, and it really fits in with the kinds of questions that came up when, like, well, how do we fit Wittgenstein in this, because he was sort of similar to Hume in a lot of his ways, and but I'll just mention a brief story first, or a habit that I have now on Twitter. Instead of just talking about religious people or whatever, I'll talk about, because it came up when someone said that atheism was a religion, and of course that's absurd. But there's something in the ballpark that's kind of close. And
I think,
like, there is this sort of attitude, and it can be religious or it can be irreligious, but it sort of circumvents around the same kinds of problems, but it just takes different responses.
Exactly.
And this is what is so fascinating about Hume, is because most people just think of him as like an atheist, but that's just too quick. He has of both, both of these aspects, both the religious aspect and the irreligious aspect. Both sort of play a role. And the same thing with Wittgenstein is really, in that kind of camp, and they're sort of struggling, with how to locate metaphysics or
exactly
religion, all of these things, which is really just philosophy. How do you locate it?
If I can add real quick, Joe. It's I remember when reading Hume's Inquiry, he had a good line in there, and he said, our lines are not so deep. I'm paraphrasing, but we cannot fathom that. Like, if someone asked him the question, do you believe in God? I think personally, Hume, he did not believe in God, but he would rightfully understand that he is a human, and that you're asking of him a titanic task that he could not possibly answer using empiricism. And I think you could agree with that, right, Joe?
Sorry, I couldn't click on the. Yeah, definitely. And I think what interests Hume, I think sometimes when people look at Hume, they get too focused on, like, was he an atheist? Was he a causal realist? The labels. Because really what he does is he raises the question, and he raises a problem, and it's a problem no matter what side of the coin you're on there. Whether it's not like the atheist has an easier pathway in the dialogues. He starts out with this version of the problem of evil, the logical problem of evil, but toward the end he backs away from that, and then there's this almost concession to theism toward the end of the dialogue. It's all very mysterious. My own opinion is that he was a complete skeptic about the nature of God, and he didn't think that God had anything to do with ethics, and nor the creation of the universe. God was the universe, or his relation to the universe doesn't have to be one of creation. That's even more mysterious than just saying he is the universe. But and you can have that view no matter whether you stand, whether you decide to say you believe in God or you don't believe in God. you can sort of make those same points. And I think that's the best way to try to read Hume, is to try to say, well, what is the point he is making to both sides of the coin? It's not that God exists or doesn't exist, but there's something about the debate that he wants.
Exactly. There's a larger discourse around it. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm done.
But no, I totally I agree with that. That's a very simplistic way to read Hume and just say, oh, look, he was an atheist. End of story. I think he was an immensely complicated man with an immensely complicated philosophy. But once you get the hang of what he uses, of like his cutting logic, or once you get the hang of his induction, I think that can reveal a lot of what Hume might have actually believed, like in the way we can interpret and read Hume. Might I also add that his concession, like you said at the end of his dialogues, where I believe it is the Epicurean who tells him, "Hey, so you and I are both skeptics on this. So why don't you tell people what is keeping these people from possibly tearing each other apart?" And Hume was like, he said something to the extent where I would call you a just reasoner, but I would call you a bad person. And is the reason why we don't tell these people that perhaps God doesn't exist is because all of their morals and ethics hang on the fact that God does exist and that there is a heaven and hell. And what are the implications for that? So he does make a concession to the virtue of like Christianity, for instance. He does make a concession to that. And I think that is also where Nietzsche, and he does later on by saying, well, fine, you might have skepticized and gotten rid of the God at that point, but guess what? You still have these values. You still have these Christian values. They're still in you. You might be an atheist, maybe, but morals have already gone to you. Like, very interesting, yeah.
Yeah, this is really a great discussion. So, Joe, I do disagree with you, and I think I made at least one response to you about atheism and religion. But I do need to end it here. But before we do, I wanted to challenge you. So I think it started with John. The way solipsists break up with people is by saying, "It's not you, it's me." and then Ook said the narcissist breaks up with, "It's me, not you." And and Blarg,
Well said.
the meta solipsist, being that I'm not sure that you even exist, I'm breaking up with part of me. So
Perhaps,
Rex,
maybe.
yeah. So the Rex challenge to you is, for a meta philosopher, what would that breakup look like?
Man, where do I begin?
Can I say what the Humean would say?
Yeah, what?
How can I break up with you? I don't exist.
The Hume would challenge what identity even is. It's like, oh well, what part of you is
Are you
changing every
really in
second?
a relationship with me? All right.
Or am I in a relationship with my own self here? What's going on?
Perhaps not, or maybe you are an abstract part of me somewhere out there. I just haven't recognized it. Who knows? It depends on your metaphysics, right?
Yeah, and Kant would say I have a categorical imperative to break up with you. But this was definitely a fabulous discussion, and thank you, Rex and Joe, for joining us. This was really fun, and definitely welcome back anytime. We have this every week at 8 p.m. So you can just pop in, and if you don't have a link, I can just give the link in the comments if you just come up in the comments. So, or, just DM me, of course. So yeah, come back anytime. And of course, and let me just put everyone back. So Steve-O, Blarg, John, and Ook. Unfortunately, I can only have 6 people on at a time. So let me just actually, no, I can't do that. So I'll bring up Ook at the end, but thanks to all the panelists, and Aaron for sticking around. Welcome back, and Tilting Windmill, and Craig, I guess, may have gone to bed. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Let me just drop Steve-O down and bring Ook back. Oh, Steve was going to say something. So I hope all your issues at home have been resolved and you're more in a stable situation.
Yeah, I'm basically. I still think I
You're
might
back.
put a. I still think I might put a
Maybe
blanket. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hope everything is okay with you now.
Yeah, I think I'll put a blanket restraining order on the rest of my living family, but that might be about it. But yeah, it's slowly getting better.
Okay, all right.
But mind you, it's the weather here has been in this new part where I'm living is been in single digits for the last week overnight, so it takes a bit of getting used to. I've got my Chinese long johns on.
Not sure what that is, but take
It
care.
does sound racist.
I'm gonna. Well, have a great night.
Have a great night, guys.
I'm also
Good night,
very
everyone.
disappointed not to have
Yeah.
Florida Gump turn up.
Oh yeah, of
He
course.
must be busy running. He's still running. Poor Florida Gump.
Yeah,
Maybe
he's
next
so I think for Rex Joe, he's someone who likes to spam the comments on a YouTube channel, The Atheist Experience, but somehow can't seem to work up the balls to come and talk to real people. But anyway,
a hater.
Making up excuses. It's always an excuse. Like he can't do a debate unless it's face to face. You got to have your face on camera. You know, funny about that. How the first one he did, the only one he did, he didn't have his face on camera.
Yeah.
You go, oh, and how he can't do it at a certain hour because he's working, but he can post stuff at that time. So always excuses.
Yeah, the only reason we kind of rag on him is because he keeps on like saying that we're running away and not willing to have a debate with him, despite this being here every week at the same time. But anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on him. But
He's a big, strong
thanks
boy.
again. What was that?
He's a big, strong boy, and he still gets his mum
Yeah.
to chew his food.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will see everyone next week, hopefully.
Bye all.
All right.
Well,
Bye. All.
Will try my best. Thank you guys for having me on.
Sure. Oh, something's not working here. All right. Thanks, everyone.